The worst week for Joe Biden. He's had a lot of bad weeks. It's hard to really pick which one is the worst. But Ted Cruz says this one deserves to be in the running. We've heard a lot about Joe Biden's confidential documents. Not really many facts out of the White House, but a lot about them. And the question is, where'd they come from? How'd they get there? Whoever saw them? Is this a criminal charge? What the heck is going on? We're learning a lot more about it. The Washington Post is now saying that their strategy at the White House, the cover-up, is worse than the crime. The inability of them to be honest and transparent about any of this stuff when they found it in November 2nd, all the way up until this moment, is worse than Joe Biden being in possession of the actual documents. So they have some serious pitfalls. We will unpack all of those, as well as take a look at this photo and some others. Hunter Biden. What kind of car is he sitting in there right there? What is that car? I don't know. We're going to have to unpack that. But let's start off by hearing from Ted Cruz. He's telling us that this is a pretty bad week for the president. Ted Cruz from Texas.
This past week has been the worst week for the Biden White House since the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, since the murder of 13 servicemen and women. The White House hasn't had as bad a week as they've had. They've had incompetence, they've had scandal, they've had corruption, they've had dishonesty, and they've had hypocrisy. And all of that has been on display in the past week. You know, when we saw Merrick Garland stand up and appoint a special counsel to investigate Joe Biden, I joked on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, that Merrick Garland...
Subscribe to his podcast. He really wants you to subscribe to it. Verdict with Ted Cruz.
Garland was like a hostage video. He was blinking out SOS because he was so unhappy, and he was forced to do it. He had no choice but appoint a special counsel, given the utter hypocrisy in going after Trump. And it was discovered that Biden had classified documents, not in one place, not in two places, not in three places, but 4 and 5. He had him stuck by his Corvette. He had him stuck in a room by the garage. He had him in the Penn Center. He had him in the residence. You got to wonder where Joe Biden didn't have classified documents. And all of his preening about irresponsibility, he's either being dishonest or incompetent. But what's clear is he's sending Karine Jean-Pierre out there to dissemble, to mislead, to say things that are factually false. And day after day, she stands up and says falsehoods from that podium. And I think it's only going to get worse.
It is. And we have covered basically every one of those over the last several press briefing days. Ever since we learned about this, I have gone through, and you've joined us, every single moment that they've asked about the Biden docs. I've clipped every single bit, haven't skipped one of them. I've watched every single press briefing. Her statement hasn't changed hardly at all. She has, in my opinion, been openly dishonest about this. We talked about her knowing about the December 20th documents, presumably, because she had to learn about the whole bundle of problems on January 9th, the same day that CBS broke that story. Presumably, she got up to speed on everything before January 9th. Everything, right? The November 2nd documents, including the December 20th documents. She should have known about those when she communicated to the American people on the 11th. But she didn't tell us about those 1220 documents. Only the 11-2 documents. And now she is freaked out because everybody's asking her, what was your involvement? When did you know about this? When did you decide to not tell us about all the things you knew? So now she says, I can't answer anything about it, honestly. If you want to know about what the Justice Department is doing, talk to the DOJ. If you want to know what the White House thinks about any of this stuff, don't ask me. I'm only the press secretary. It's only my job. Talk to the White House counsel instead, because I can't answer any questions. It's going to get worse. Okay, Trump has a serious advantage because he's not in office. They are in office. They don't get to just continue to hide indefinitely. Now, the Washington Post is communicating that this is evidently becoming a very serious problem. They posted this, January 18th. Inside the White House document strategy. And its pitfalls. All right, so that means that there was a strategy. Okay, hopefully it's a good one. Let's see. Biden aides are said to have tried to defer to the DOJ, lie low, okay, which means cover it up. Lie low. Let's just lie low. What are you talking? Is the Washington Post? They're conjugating these phrases. If this was a Trump article, it would say cover up or lie and avoid Trump-like behavior. They got a political firestorm and then a special counsel written by Matt Visor and 4 other people. It takes 30 people to write these articles now. One of President Biden's personal attorneys, And we've been trying to unpack this for some time. We're going to see if we can get any new details from this article. Let's just take a quick recollection of what the timeline looks like and some of the questions that we are still trying to tease out on this. Remember that on November 2nd, on this date, we had questions about who showed up first. Was it Pat Moore or somebody else? Pat Moore is this person right here, just so we have names to faces. Pat Moore evidently was one of the first people who showed up at the Penn Biden Center. That's that same center that we're going to learn is very, very heavily funded by the Chinese. Somebody did a drive-by, a walkthrough on this building. There was nobody even there, right? It's just a big, in my opinion, gigantic money laundering fraud scheme. So who shows up there? Why do they show up? What was in the scope of their fee agreements? And were they alone? And who was their first call? And how did all of this work? Because we know that when Merrick Garland came out and gave us his little press briefing, he told us that he got it all on November 4th, which was a Friday. But they found the documents on November 2nd, which was a Wednesday. So what happened in that day there? On November 3rd? Don't know. We had a bunch of these questions. Who called the White House? Who at the White House got the call? When did everyone get involved? As soon as somebody at the White House got the call, who was on the phone next? Ron Klain, White House Chief of Staff? Karine? Anybody from any national intelligence agency, community, DOJ? Who's all involved, right? This is a confidential documents emergency. Who was at the National Archives when they got the call? And what was the timeline of the transition from the White House to the OIG? Let's see if we can get any facts from this article. One of the president's personal attorneys, they write, entered the 10-story office building so near the U.S. Capitol that its promoters billed it as the, quote, front seat to power, which is why it's perfect for the Chinese. On a Wednesday last November, they were there to begin what seemed like a mundane task, clearing out a rarely used office that Biden occupied after leaving the vice presidency. So a couple lawyers are just like, what are you doing? Well, I'm just clearing out some offices. Hopefully there's nothing in there. Whistling while they work. The attorney, Pat Moore, the gentleman we just saw, who was prior counsel for, many other campaigns, Democrats. Pat Moore went through a large closet, found nothing out of the ordinary. Somebody familiar with the matter said. Who is the source? Somebody familiar with the matter. And they're speaking on condition of anonymity. Then he tackled a smaller closet. And in that closet, typical Joe Biden, he found it stuffed with folders, boxes, and other political memorabilia, including documents related to Beau Biden's funeral. Drafts of political speeches and boxes of personal books, the person said. But next, Moore made a very surprising discovery. A folder with a cover sheet saying it contained secret government documents. Moore immediately called another attorney, ? Who? And notified the White House counsel's office, which in turn contacted the National Archives, according to two people familiar with the matter. And again, no new information on this. Okay, we go back to the mind map as we have already discussed. We're still trying to unpack this. Who was the other lawyer who showed up? Bob Bauer, we might think represents one of these two guys. Bob Bauer, it might actually be representing Pat Moore. We don't know. We learned about that yesterday in the press briefing from, I think, the CBS story. Is Bob Bauer representing him or him? We don't know. So the Washington Post explains this very quickly. Look at all this information they pack into this one sentence. We don't know. Called another attorney, notified the White House. They contacted the National Archives. Boom, boom, boom. The chain of custody followed the bouncing ball. We're missing a whole bounce. But if the way they found the classified documents was out of the ordinary, Biden's lawyers were determined to be sticklers for the rules once it happened, said people familiar with their work. Oh, we shouldn't have found it, but once we did find it, we realized we're going to do everything by the book. Those first decisions inside the complex at the Penn Biden Center launched a 71-day push by Biden's team, federal archivists, and the Justice Department to make sense of the startling discovery. All of that taking place, and we knew nothing about it until January 9th. And they didn't tell us. CBS did. It culminated in Attorney General Merrick Garland's decision, to the deep consternation of many in the White House, to appoint a special counsel. We covered this press briefing at length. This is Merrick Garland. He brought out John Lausch. John Lausch is the guy who was appointed back actually in November after the original documents were found. And then he gave, allegedly, John Lausch allegedly gave Merrick Garland a briefing, started his assessment November 14th after the documents were found on the 2nd. We fast forward, second batch is found on the 20th. Then we get a brief. Lausch then briefs Garland on January 5th. Now, I have a big question about whether, was this a planned meeting? Or did they plan this meeting after they heard that this story was about to break? I still don't know. Karine said that she found out about it around the time that the CBS story broke. She said, I wasn't involved in anything, if anybody believes that. I found out around the same time you guys were working on the story. That was the clip she said. So if it was right around the same time that they were working on the story, does that mean she found out on the day of publication? Probably not, right? Because they would have asked her for comment. What's the White House take on this? So did they send the story on the 6th after the meeting? Or did they send a request before the meeting and they thought, we better really sit down and discuss whether we need a special counsel or not. Otherwise, we're going to look like we are completely corrupt. So then, boom, they schedule, this rapid fire special counsel meeting. Then the story breaks and then they can piece it back together and say, oh, no, we were already investigating. We were going to do that anyway. No. And it's all such a surprise that Joe Biden conveniently has a statement that's all just ready to read, right? He just walks out on January 10th. He's like, just got this thing right here. And I know exactly what it says and it's all been handled because his lawyers are already on the case. So Lausch then gets involved. Interviews with people directly involved in the discovery. And the subsequent fallout provided new details on the effort to handle the crisis created at the intersection of politics, intelligence, and the law. Republicans and other critics say the White House was, at minimum, slow to seek the truth and level with the public. Biden's aides say that they were simply proceeding with caution in a very sensitive probe, and we were taking the lead from the federal investigators. In mid-November, they say that in a communication that has not yet been previously reported in November, mid-November, so we don't know what date it is, we're going to add it to the mind map, a senior official in the Justice Department's National Security Division who wrote a letter to Bob Bauer, Biden's personal attorney, asking for his cooperation with the department's inquiry. The justice official asked specifically that Biden's legal team secure the materials from the Penn Biden Center and refrain from further reviewing them or other relevant documents that might be stored at different locations, according to the letter, the contents of which were shared with the Post. All right, so if we clip this out, we see that here they're saying in mid-November, we can go back to the mind map and add it mid-November. Now, we don't know exactly when. So presumably, it's right around the same time that this Lausch is assigned. Okay, Garland assigns USAO Lausch. So we're probably thinking that around November, let's say like 20th-ish, we get a letter from the DOJ to Bob Bauer, Biden's lawyer. And Bob Bauer is actually a former White House special counsel, was formerly a White House special counsel to, I think it was Barack Obama when he was actually over there. So he sends a letter back over to Bob Bauer. And we've already actually put Bob Bauer in the first part of the mind map because we think it's this same guy who's working to represent one of these other attorneys. Bob Bauer is this fella here. And I had a picture of him in a prior show. But you're following along, and so it's all kind of convoluted. The point is, November 20th-ish, they say don't continue to look at the documents. Let's pick it back up. The justice official also requested that Bauer give the DOJ formal consent to review the materials. and that he provide a list of other locations with relevant materials to be stored as the department weighed the proper protocols for future document searches. Permission to review other locations. The letter, with its implication that the Justice Department would take the lead in the inquiry, paved the way for the Biden team's approach. So Biden's now interfacing with the DOJ. They adopted a strategy of caution and deference, making only limited moves in coordination with federal investigators to determine the number of documents involved, their significance, and how they were mishandled. They hoped that that would earn the trust of the investigators, avoid comparisons with the former President Trump, who's under federal investigation of his own, and end the matter quickly. Right? Their thesis was they would cover this up, end the matter quickly. That's a cover-up. Instead, it yielded a political firestorm, and it repeated accusations of obfuscation, and instead of a speedy resolution, now they've got a special counsel probe. If they would have just come out and told us, right, about this at the very beginning, they could have said it's very different than Trump's case and we're just going to resolve it under the direction of the DOJ. It would have been a different story, but they kept this under wraps. Former Senator Doug Jones, a Democrat from Alabama, said that the Biden team was right to notify the authorities quickly, adding that it was critical to respond appropriately. Still, Democrat says, yeah, he could have been more transparent with the public. He says, I probably would have opted to do some things a little bit differently. You know, he's a one-time prosecutor, like not covering it up. When it came to the appropriate time to make a statement, give as much facts as you can without jeopardizing the investigation. Now, after the Biden White House alerted the National Archives, it did make initial moves to learn how the classified documents had reached the center and possibly elsewhere, according to two people familiar with the process. But by November 10th, a day after Biden held a celebratory news conference touting Democrats' strong midterm election results, the DOJ informed Biden's lawyers that it was launching its own inquiry and within weeks would be sitting down with Biden aides for interviews, according to two people familiar with the process. Weird how that happens. It's all pretty quiet up until the election. We have just a little bit of a delay. Documents are found. Call the White House. White House fiddles around for a day or two. They call the National Archives. DOJ gets involved. They say, oh, man, it's a Friday, though. Should we tell the American people about any of this stuff? That we found some documents and maybe it could be something, probably nothing or anything like that. I mean, we could, but it's like 4:45 right now, though. Like it's Friday, November 4th. We could probably just do it next week, right? Yeah, that's probably a good call. So they just wait. Oh, man, I forgot about the election. Oh, okay. Well, now we better get to it. So they come back to the office next week. They're still hungover. And on November 9th, they say, oh, gosh, we better look at that file all of a sudden. Wow, okay, great. Maybe we should appoint somebody. Then Garland fiddles around for another few days, and Garland assigns, finally, some prosecutor to look into it. Then they get a letter saying, okay, on November 20th now. Okay, think about how far away that is from the date of the original find. 18 days, November 20th-ish. Okay, could be after that, could be sooner. We don't know exactly what the date is. Almost 3 weeks before they finally get a letter from the DOJ. Hey, it's probably a good idea that you stop rummaging around everything. And are there any other documents? And do we have your permission? Almost 3 weeks, give or take, before they finally said stop rummaging around. Trump had FBI agents on his property going through Melania's underwear. And they're just, we'll get around to it. November, mid-November. So finally, they're going to get to interviews. At that point, Biden's attorneys then stopped seeking information from his staffers. They wanted to avoid any impression they were tampering with witnesses. They had already gotten the job done, okay, at that point. Believe me, it's been 3 weeks. They cleaned everything up. Oh, no, we don't need to talk to you anymore. Instead, they switched abruptly to a highly cautious mode, deferring almost completely to federal investigators, so that now they don't have to answer any questions. Among other things, Biden top aides were keenly aware that Trump had spent months defiantly refusing to return the documents. They say the last thing Biden supporters would have wanted was a parallel probe, but that's what they got. Early on, there was a shared desire to keep quiet. Everybody wanted to cover this up. This is from the Washington Post, not Fox News. Early on, Biden's attorneys and the Justice Department investigators both thought they had a shared understanding about keeping the matter quiet. What? Let me read that one more time here. There was a shared desire to keep quiet. And just as a reminder, Joe Biden is the president. The Department of Justice is in the executive branch, which is under the purview of the presidency. That's what the presidency is. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. When a potential investigation from the DOJ into the presidency, which is your boss, and you both decide you're going to keep this quiet, this is the Washington Post printing this. This is called a cover-up, okay? You can just replace this. Anytime you see this phrase, to keep quiet equals cover-up. Early on, Biden's attorneys and the Justice Department investigators both thought they had a shared understanding about keeping the matter quiet. Oh my gosh. But they had very different reasons. Well, the White House was hoping for a speedy inquiry that would find no intentional mishandling of the documents and planning to disclose the matter only after the Justice Department issued its all clear. Federal investigators, for their part, typically try to avoid complicating any probe with a media feeding frenzy. These two sides are just the most rotten in the whole world. It's unbelievable. They're both playing patty cake with each other. And look whose name shows up in the article. As always, the person who actually runs the Justice Department, Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. She declined at a news conference on Wednesday to say whether law enforcement officials suggested Biden representatives should keep quiet about the case. Did you tell them to shut their mouths, or was that their idea? Because if it's your idea, that's a big problem. If it's their idea, that's a big problem too. Who said it? But the approach would end up prompting accusations that the Biden team had purposely kept the public in the dark. They did. They did keep America in the dark. Biden's aides sought to follow the Justice Department's guidance, heeding its protocols for conducting searches and reporting additional discoveries, said the two people familiar with the probe. Some at the White House remained furious at Garland and other DOJ officials, saying the Attorney General named a special counsel to pursue Biden even after they did everything the department had asked. Wow. So there's a little bit of animosity brewing there in the Biden cabinet. Despite the consultation between the DOJ and Biden, 6 weeks elapsed before Biden's attorneys discovered additional documents at his Wilmington home. There was a lot to comb through. When Biden left the vice presidency, he received a temporary office space where he and his aides were supposed to separate personal papers from the official records that, under the Presidential Records Act, must go to the National Archives. After 6 months, the archives typically take custody of classified material. At the time, Biden was renting a 12,000 square foot house in McLean, Virginia, where he kept a private office. But in February 2018, the Penn Biden Center officially opened, providing another space for him to work. The center, created at the University of Pennsylvania, was a think tank academic hub. As attention focused on the documents path, Biden's longtime executive assistant, Kelly Chung, we have a new name, has confided to associates that she is distressed that she might have been inadvertently moving and storing classified material at the center, planting the seeds of the current uproar. Bill Taylor, Chung's lawyer, declined to comment. We have a new person here. Confided to associates she's distressed that she might have inadvertently been involved in moving or storing classified material. All right, so poor Kathy Chung's about to get taken out. She is the new fall person now involved in this. So good luck to Miss Kathy Chung. So we'll add her into the conversation and the mind map and watch closely to see what happens with her. Chung became Biden's executive assistant after the president's son, Hunter, alerted her to the vacant post. Chung had worked on Capitol Hill. Ted Kaufman, the president's longtime confidant and former chief of staff, recommended her for the job. They were also looking for items in the garage. 1967 Corvette. Wow. Biden had just returned to Washington from a long pre-Christmas weekend in Delaware when his personal attorneys began another search, 7 weeks and 110 miles away from the first. This time, the lawyers were looking in Biden's garage in Wilmington. It's where Biden stores his Corvette. The garage, in footage captured outside the campaign, had multiple cardboard boxes and a lampshade that I still suspect is covering Hunter Biden's bong, sitting off to the side. Biden, during this time, this is probably when they found the December 20th documents, right? Biden had been kept up to speed, and he had to sign off on searches of his personal property. Okay, that's nice. They asked him for permission to search his property. They didn't raid it with the FBI. Now, they should have, right? Because they found the first batch of documents in the Penn Biden Center, and that means that Joe Biden has a confidential document problem. They said that Trump had a confidential document problem, therefore that warranted FBI raiding. He's got another batch. It wasn't until mid-November that his attorneys got a letter. So I got to go back after the show and match these dates up again. He had dealt with classified materials. He was writing a book after leaving the presidency, saying maybe that's why they're there. When his lawyers searched the garage, they found what they called a small number of records with classified markings. Once they made the discovery, they alerted John Lausch, the guy we've talked about. The U.S. attorney overseeing the inquiry, they immediately stopped searching, according to a timeline that Bauer released on Saturday. This is the property, Wilmington, Delaware. Smaller home in front was built for his mom, I guess. I guess that's a smaller home. You know, probably has, I don't know, 10, 13 bedrooms. All right. Veterans of cases involving these people familiar with the case. Kathy Chung, was interviewed by the DOJ on January 4th. While she was involved in the record, she had no connection to those sent to Biden's home in Wilmington. All right. So they can't stick her with that one. Public revelations reveal that there are more searches. Now, the drama was still unfolding out of the public eye with only a tight circle of White House advisors aware of it. Those advisors crafted a statement shortly after the documents were first discovered. In case news of finding leaked. These people covered this up so badly. While the drama was still unfolding out of the public eye, with only a tight circle of White House advisors aware of it, those advisors crafted a statement shortly after the documents were first discovered in November. In case news of that finding leaked, they wrote a cover-up statement while they were covering it up in case it got uncovered. But that statement would go unused. Biden's top aides were determined that the legal process would override any political moves or public messaging, not the other way around. They did not want to be seen as trying to shape the investigation's outcome. They say, this is a rule of law administration. We were just trying to cover it up. But this was not a run-of-the-mill legal process. It was handling a sensitive information. It was by the president, highly polarized political backdrop. They just raided a former president's house over this. CBS News first broke the story of the matter, contacting the White House on January 6th. Oh, man, that's a date that we want right there. That's a beautiful one. All right. Now, that answers one of my questions about whether or not this was that January 5th meeting between Garland and Lausch was pre-planned or not. So what they're saying here on this mind map, CBS broke the story on January 9th. U.S. attorney reviewing documents says that there were findings at one of Biden's houses. There was a meeting that took place on January 6th. We just learned that on January 5th, there was a meeting. We just learned on January 6th, CBS contacted KJP, or basically the White House, on that day. And so that's when she learned about it. On January 6th to ask about the documents. So she actually said that she found out around the same time. So it could have been really, roughly around that time. We still don't know specifically when Karine Jean-Pierre found out about any of this, but we know that CBS contacted the White House at least on the 6th. So now, do you believe that they just happened to meet on the 5th and decided they needed a special counsel, and then the White House, Karine Jean-Pierre, learned about all of this the next day? What a very interesting coincidence. And then CBS broke the story, and then Karine's like, wow, this is all news to me. Amazing. Very, very convenient. But since the investigation was ongoing, they decided not to offer any more details. They did confirm the scoop on the 6th, but no more details. A few days later, just after 5 p.m. on January 9th, CBS News aired its report. Biden was in Mexico. Motorcade was filled with his top advisors, some of whom worked with him at the Penn Biden Center. By happenstance, Garland, who days earlier had been advised to name special counsel on the 5th, was on a trip to Mexico and in the president's motorcade. They're riding around in Mexico together. But oh my gosh. Do you remember, folks? Do you remember when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton met with Attorney General Loretta Lynch, or whatever that saga was? They landed in an airport and they just happened to bump into each other. Most of those who were traveling with Biden were blindsided by the story. The next day, Biden told reporters that he was surprised about the documents that he found, making no mention of those at his Wilmington house. That reflected a decision by Biden's advisors to only react to what was publicly known, not to elaborate or provide additional information for fear of appearing to infringe on the DOJ's work. Even some of Biden's top officials had been kept in the dark. This is what she said. KJP said press repeatedly about the documents struggled to provide clear-cut answers. There's no way for me to talk about the documents if he has said that he doesn't know what's in them. We're just going to allow the process to continue. She said no more assurances. She repeated herself like a broken record for the last 3 days. On January 11th, Biden's personal attorneys went back to Wilmington to continue their search. And that was on the 11th. Personal lawyer went back down. We don't know who that lawyer was. Extra batch was found on the 11th. We followed that one. As they sifted through the documents in a room next to Biden's garage, they found a page with classified markings. Leaving it there, they moved on to other parts of the house, according to Bauer's timeline. So again, I don't know if they have clearance to do that, right? Are they allowed to go search? Like, if you don't have security clearances to handle top secret classified documents, are you allowed to go search for top secret classified documents? That doesn't make all that much sense to me. And this was on January 11th. And so presumably that's after the time that they got the letter from Lausch that we just covered. We just added this to the mind map where they said there was a letter from the DOJ. This is from the same article. Mid-November-ish, the DOJ sent a letter to Bob Bauer. In mid-November, in a communication that's not previously been seen, a senior official at the DOJ wrote a letter to Bob Bauer, Biden's personal lawyer, the same guy we're going to talk about next, asking for his cooperation. Asked him, secure the materials from Penn, refrain from viewing them or other relevant documents that might be stored at different locations. The DOJ asked them, stop looking. That's according to the Washington Post. It's right here. But when you go back here, on January 11th, Biden's personal lawyers went back to Wilmington to continue their search. Did they not get the letter that came from the DOJ? Why? And actually, it was according to Bauer, like Bauer wrote the timeline. So in his timeline, does he say we got a letter mid-November from the DOJ that said stop looking at stuff and I went and looked anyways? What are they doing? The Biden attorneys traveled to the president's vacation home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. No classified records were found there because it had already been shredded, according to Bauer's timeline. So the special counsel then gets appointed. In the morning, Biden's lawyers informed justice investigators of the additional document in Wilmington. The White House also released a statement acknowledging they found the second batch. About 20 minutes after that statement, Biden held an event touting improved economic numbers. As soon as he finished, he was asked about additional classified information. He said, by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage, okay? I think he was kind of joking about it. Not like they're sitting out there in the street. And he said, I'm going to get a chance to speak about this, God willing, soon. Then Garland came out, appointed as special counsel. They're firing different comparisons off. They're very angry. They say this was an honest mistake. Some are very critical of his lawyers. Several Biden aides now regret that initial strategy, obviously, recognizing it made them appear less than transparent. Biden's team is now trying to shift to a more proactive approach. They clearly have lines that they're not going to cross over. But these are cascading revelations. Yeah. The Penn Biden Center office that Moore had first gone to empty has remained uncleared. So that office is still full over there. And wow. So as you can see, there's a pretty interesting revelation in this article. Sounds like the DOJ said stop looking. And they kept looking. Flew to Rehoboth, flew to Wilmington, and actually found more documents. So why are they disregarding direct requests from the DOJ? That's my question. They said that they're cooperating. Karine Jean-Pierre said, we're cooperating with everything. They sent a letter to the White House that says, don't go look for more documents. They were still looking for documents as of a week ago. So where is that cooperation? Unbelievable. All right. That's the timeline. Now, spent a lot longer on that than I thought. There's a lot of juiciness in that article. But let's see what else they have in store for us, because there's a whole lot more to get to today. And there are additional articles saying what a catastrophe this is. First one comes over from Free Beacon. They're saying in Wilmington, Hunter Biden actually lived there. And here are the photos. Over from the Washington Free Beacon, written by Andrew Kerr, January 18, 2023. Look at this photo. Who is that? Who is that person? And who are those two, definitely adult individuals who are in the car next to him? And he has an American flag on his hat. It's very offensive to America. Here's what they write about these photos. We're going to take a look at them. Photos, writes Andrew, from Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop that we've talked a lot about here, show that the scandal-plagued first son had access to Joe Biden's daddy Corvette that he kept in the garage next to those confidential documents under the lampshade. But a review of Hunter Biden's laptop that was conducted by the Washington Free Beacon found 4 2017 photographs of Hunter Biden. White collared shirt, camouflage baseball cap, behind the wheel of a 1967 Corvette Stingray. Now, what you can do when you extract these photos is pull out GPS metadata from the files. When they did that, they recognized that these photos were taken within just 1 minute of each other. And it happened at 6:49 p.m., July 30th, just outside the Wilmington residence. The photos show Hunter Biden posing in the vehicle beside 2 young girls. One appears to be his 12-year-old niece, Natalie. The other could not be identified. And so you see the photo, faces are blurred out, of course. But when you actually look in the photo, you can extract, I think it's called EXIF data, the EXIF data. And you can see iPhone 7 Plus. The date is here, date and time, 2017. The aperture value, brightness value, all the details. And one of the details is location. And so they were able to find the location, and you see Hunter Biden riding in Daddy's Corvette with evidently his niece. And so as the story continues, it says, while it's unclear exactly when Joe Biden transferred those classified records, sources close to the president have suggested that the transfer occurred when he was shutting down his office in 2017. Photos are the most concrete evidence to date that Hunter Biden had access to areas of Joe Biden's home where the classified records were stored. If he's got access to the Corvette, he's got access to the garage. It's unclear who else had access to the president's car or the garage in which it was stored. The White House said this week that it doesn't keep visitor logs. We'll talk about that in a minute. Here is another photo. You can see somebody actually put the address into a map and they pinned it right there in Joe Biden's home. Beautiful property, right on the water. 2 houses, a whole separate house for mom. The White House and Hunter Biden didn't respond to any requests for comments. Now, if Hunter did have access to the classified documents, other national security concerns might pop up. Konstantinos, Gus, a former Secret Service agent and a certified cyber forensics expert who analyzed the Hunter Biden laptop, says, yeah, I can attest to the authenticity of these documents. He was there. At the time he was there, he was meeting with all sorts of different business people. We talked all about the CEFC and Hunter Biden's affairs. Hunter Biden was also issued a Delaware driver's license in May, listed his father's home as his address. He directed his Wells Fargo financial advisor to change his banking address to his residence, and he also added the address to his PayPal account in January 2019. And a notarized deed identifies Hunter Biden as, quote, a divorced man residing at his father's Wilmington property. So he was inside. He was getting the Corvette. He was taking his nieces around for joyrides, doing whatever they were doing there in that Biden family. Don't even want to know. All right, so that's another story of what was going on there with that Corvette. But it wasn't just that, and he wasn't just roaming around there. There's more. Breitbart says that he was also bagging millions of dollars while he was living there, all of it linked to Chinese intelligence. Breitbart.com has this exclusive. And they write, very fun, they say, while addicted to drugs and cavorting with prostitutes, Hunter Biden lived in the house where they stored the documents. There was another document found that said that he paid $49,910 a month for the property. And we had talked about that previously on the show. This was the document. You saw it said here, current residence and the monthly rent is $49,910 a month. Woo, nice rent. Hunter also listed that address on his license, claimed to pay rent there from March 2017 to Feb 2018 at the Wilmington address. They say, though, he was not paying his father $50,000 a month. That was office space in another location. But the period that he did live there, the Wilmington house, it overlaps with the time when Biden and Biden family members were taking tons of money from the CCP. Here's a photograph of these two little something or others. Yeah. Hunter claimed on various documents that he lived at the Wilmington house between 2017 and 2019. They say this is problematic because he had many Chinese business deals back during that time. Beginning in late 2015, while Daddy was still vice president, Hunter began making plans with people like Patrick Ho, Ye Jingming, Gongweng Dao, all of these people we talked about. He got diamonds like this one, something like $80,000. 3.16 carat diamond was a gift to him from somebody. All sorts of shady deals. And we've covered this. If you missed the interview with Garrett Ziegler from Marco Polo USA that we did on this channel, I highly recommend it because he has done his due diligence on this case. And you can check out more there at marcopolousa.org to learn more about this scheme. Chairman Hunter Biden, monochrome name, 50%, 50%, Hudson West. Wow, these are geniuses here. Look at this org chart. I'm pretty bad at math, but if you have two people, you both get half the pizza. Throughout the summer of 2017, the CEFC arrangements were being hashed out. Hunter agreed to represent all these people. They executed an agreement. Hunter was ultimately paid $1 million through Owasco, which is that organization that they use their org chart for. Very interestingly, though, the partner, Ho, was arrested, convicted December, international bribery and money laundering charges. Oh, upon incarceration, guess who Ho called first? Brother Biden, James. He was looking for Hunter, and James gave him Hunter's contact information. He's like, oh, crap, don't call me. You're looking for Hunter? You're in jail? Oh, he's familiar with all that stuff. Call him. Hunter had never been a serious attorney, right? He just sort of went to law school. I think he graduated as a lawyer. So his receiving $1 million to represent Ho is notable, given that Hunter apparently was living in a house with classified documents at the time. Wait a minute. To represent him, he got paid $1 million to represent him on a criminal case? Oh my gosh, what a scam. Oh my gosh. That's bribe money, man. The same month that Hunter executed the representation agreement for the Patrick Ho matter, 3 separate credit cards were linked to Hunter, James, and Sarah. Credit cards allowed the Bidens to go on extravagant shopping sprees. They racked up $100,000 in purchases. September 2017, Hunter Biden leased the office at the House of Sweden for an entity. A September 2017 email shows Hunter requesting keys to the building for Joe Biden, Jill Biden, Jim Biden, and Chairman Ye. Remember that? We covered that one. Hey, it's great to move into your building. I need them for my family and China. All right, you can read the rest of the story here over at Breitbart, but they've got more on the exclusive, and the story just continues to unfold. There's a lot there. But we'll continue on. Of course, Biden is not taking any questions about any of this.